Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Thanks for your attendance. This is going to be interesting. Hi. This is always interesting. I'm enthralled. You know, Sandra and I have the best job in the world because it's fun. Yeah, it's hard work, but it's fun. So before we get into anything, are there any questions up front? Any questions? There's never a silly question. Don't be bashful. We want to hear from you. Any question whatsoever.
And Tom, we may have new people in our audience tonight. So I think before we should preface this a little bit with a little background for anybody who's only mildly familiar with you. I know Maria probably heard you on the summit. Hi, how are you? But I don't know how much more she really knows or if she took a trial. So knowing that there could be a few new people on here, would you kindly just give a little background before you go into what you're about to go into tonight?
Well, you realize the only way we can access you is by way of your photograph. So we work with people around the world by way of their photograph. And a lot of people who don't understand the quantum field, they say, well, that's ridiculous. Well, it's no more ridiculous than I would take a cell phone and my signal would carry from my cell phone 1,000 miles away. There's obviously not a physical connection between this signal and a person 1,000 miles away. There's no physical wire. So we're working in the information field. That's it. What is scalar energy? It's an information field. So, and we have seen with these instruments, it's incredible what a scalar instrument can do. It sends information around the world by way of your photograph. Here's an example. People from Africa send me photographs. This is a collage from Africa, from Cameroon. And we work with people pro bono around the world by way of their photograph. So we always tell people, well, you know, this is not a physical treatment. It's not. We're working with information, energy. And it's always been my point that a photograph is similar to a cell phone. If you can send a photograph energy as you send a cell phone energy, that you can deliver a signal to people just like you can deliver a cell phone signal to somebody. So we're working in the information field. This is non-physical. It's just, it's light, it's information. Now, what have we found out about scalar energy? It's responsible for the bonds. If these two fingers represent a hydrogen bond in DNA, that DNA is held together by a hydrogen bond. So we can either release a hydrogen bond or assemble it. So what is scalar energy? It's the intelligence of the universe. It holds everything together. It's responsible for all the bonds. It's responsible for all the connection of elements, molecules, and atoms, etc. So with that in mind, we have some examples in nature. This is going to really serve to bolster our argument by way of these photographs. Now, I've noticed that in nature abounds with examples of scalar energy, and they're subtle. But in some cases, during hurricanes and tornadoes, there's a great deal of scalar energy. And what do I mean by that? Scalar energy is a vortex. It cycles. It's a whirling cycle. It's a vortex. And especially in very strong tornadoes or very strong hurricanes, you have that cycling of energy, that cycling of information. That cycling of information is scalar energy. Now, in some very strong hurricanes and in some very strong tornadoes, they're so strong that they have an influence on the information. So a strong tornado can either assemble a molecular bond or disassemble a molecular bond. Let me repeat that. A tornado, some tornadoes are so strong, they produce such a strong scalar force field, it can either assemble a molecule or break it apart, okay? Now, we're gonna show you some photographs that are the aftermath, the result of very strong tornadoes.
Still unmuted.
Very strong tornadoes that essentially have served to change, at least for a split second, matter. Okay, I'm going to repeat that. Very strong tornadoes that are acting upon the physical world and sending information into the physical world. And what we've seen, some matter will unbind and then come back together, will unbind and bind during tornadoes.
Let me pull this up for you, Tom.
So we're going to show you photographs of objects that were acted upon during very strong tornadoes. And those objects lose their molecular rigidity. They no longer are solids. They're no longer solids. For a brief moment in time, those molecular forms become spirit-like, or almost like a gas state, So imagine two physical forms that cannot interpenetrate, but after a tornado, they can merge together. What do I mean? If this is a physical form and this is a physical form, we know that two physical forms, like my two fists, they cannot interpenetrate. They're both solid. But imagine if my two fists became gas-like or spirit-like, just for a brief second, so that my two fists could join, could interpenetrate, and then form, and if you will, after that brief lapse, that brief intermission of molecular bonds, they would form, they would fuse together, they would interpenetrate. Okay?
Can anybody see my screen? It's telling me that my screen share, let me do. It says it was paused, so I didn't know if you guys saw that. I had the whole thing up on the screen. It keeps telling me it's paused, so you cannot see you can't see the picture.
No, it's just white. There's no picture.
That is really odd. It keeps telling me that, well, you guys have the picture, but that's what he's talking about. I'm going to stop sharing. It's obviously not sharing.
Okay, I have some photographs that I'm going to share with the audience now.
Okay, and they've got it in their chat, but.
Okay, this photograph is the aftermath of a tornado, and you're going to see two trees fused together. Remember, if each fist represents a tree, those two trees cannot interpenetrate. But I'm saying during a tornado, the molecular bonds are released and those two trees become gas-like so that they interpenetrate one another. Now take a close look at this photograph. This tree has interpenetrated this tree. Those two trees have combined. This is the aftermath of our tornado. Can everybody see that? Am I clear? Okay, everybody can hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Now I'm going to put these on our on Facebook tonight and tomorrow. This is fascinating, people, and this proves, or at least this is evidence to me, that during a strong scalar energy force field, matter can change. Matter is interpenetrating. Look at those two trees. They've interpenetrated.
And that may not be as easy to see as the one with the vinyl record.
Yeah, that's coming up.
Yeah,
that's coming up.
Okay, great, because that
Here's another photograph. I'm going to put these on our Facebook page tonight and tomorrow. Look at this vinyl record that is interpenetrated. This is a wooden telephone pole. This vinyl record has fused into a wooden pole, a telephone pole. All of this is the aftermath, okay, of the tornado, the wreckage that it leaves.
But now, how do you know it didn't just cut in both cases? You'd have to slice it off and see what the inside looks like, right?
Right. These are just some examples in nature, okay? I'm not saying this happens all the time. So what am I getting at? This is an information system, and a tornado will exhibit a strong force field of scalar energy. And many times in those tornadoes, matter will unbind and will loosen its rigidity. And then in some cases, it can fuse together again. Now, remember what we've said, we're able to take matter, bacteria, viruses, and break them apart. So this speaks to our concept, at least by way of working with photographs, that we can unbind matter. We can break apart matter. And in this case, matter will reform, these trees will reform and fuse together. Okay? Here's another example. This is a tornado in Joplin, Missouri. This hose interpenetrated a tree. That plastic hose is now incorporated in a tree. It was just a plastic hose on the ground. During the tornado, the force field was so strong that the molecular bonds of the hose and the tree were so spirit-like, so gas-like, that these two objects fused together. Okay? Look at that carefully. I'm going to put these on Facebook tonight and tomorrow.
There's
My point
of power in the vortex.
What is my point? When you're working with this energy, scalar energy, you control matter coming together, binding, or matter breaking apart. Okay? This is so important. Now, in the future, what if this was waste? What if this was toxic waste? You just break it apart. What if we wanted to create water for a farm field? You just create water. Presently, if this is a virus, we break it apart. I've said that before. We can break apart germs. So this shows you, this is the beginning proof that a scalar energy force field exists. Here's another example. This is a playing card that's impaled, that's incorporated in a tree. That's a wooden tree. Look at that. Here's another example. Years ago, after a tornado, this wooden plank is incorporated in a telephone pole. There's many photographs like this that we could share. Here's one more. After a hurricane, they found, this is a tree in the background of a home, a piece of plank is incorporated in the tree. The two have combined together. So we see this throughout nature, and we have to start asking ourselves, you know, what is this? What is this an indication of? Here's another one. I love this one. This is really clear. Another aftermath of a hurricane. And you see the wooden plank is now incorporated in the vertical tree.
It's pretty incredible stuff. So we can see visible signs of other means of transmutation that we talk about all the time, right there in nature. Pretty incredible.
Okay. And that's the proper term, transmutation. You know, now for a brief moment, the tree could incorporate the wooden plank. Imagine when you have two liquids and those two liquids are combined and commingled. Well, they mix easily because they're not solid. So what am I getting at? For a brief moment in time, the tree and the plank is horizontal, were almost liquid-like or gas-like. And the two combined, they interpenetrated. Okay. This
But
is
how
becoming,
can you say it didn't just cut through because of the force of the hurricane? Is it because it's still intact?
yes, it's still intact. In other words, what I'm showing you is a permanent fixture now.
Yeah.
A permanent fixture. Now, I've never said this before publicly. I'm going to say it now. There was an experiment called the Philadelphia experiment. Have you ever heard of that? Okay. Apparently Nikola Tesla was behind that experiment, I don't know. But there were two gigantic Tesla coils placed on a ship. It was a ship of the US Navy. And it was a scalar energy experiment. And after the experiment concluded, they found that some of the soldiers were fused into the ship. Some of the, I should say, sailors were fused into the hull of the ship.
Oh my.
So for a brief moment in time, if this is true, those soldiers became gas-like and they were incorporated into the ship. Now,
What happened
this
to
is
them?
what
What happened to them? Did they get out?
No, sadly, they died. They died.
Oh.
Now, there were reports that the aftermath, they saw a few of these sailors who were interpenetrated into the hull, into the marine hull of the ship. They became part of the ship. They were, if you will, if this represents the deck of the ship, then half of my body is above the ship and the other half is inside the hull of the ship. Okay. Is that true and accurate? I wasn't there. I hear reports. But if that is indeed true and accurate, then it calls to mind this same phenomenon where this wooden plank is now frozen, so to speak, within the tree trunk. I will share these on our Facebook, Tom Paladino Scalar Light. So we have photograph after photograph, event after event, example after example as to how these objects interpenetrate. It's phenomenal. How does that happen? What is the animating force? Well, in this case, it's extreme atmospheric conditions, specifically a tornado, which is a rotating scalar energy force field. Now, I don't have a tornado in my laboratory, but with my tornado, my miniature tornado, I can break apart germs. If we can release the molecular bonds on a tree and a wooden plank, then to some extent, I have control over matter and I can break apart viruses, bacteria, and fungi. Do you see the parallel here between examples in nature and examples what we have achieved with people around the world? This is the quantum energy force field. It's not electricity. We're not working with electricity. And again, in all fairness, I will share by tomorrow. Give me some time. I'll upload 6 or 7 photographs, and you take a close look at them on Facebook, and you'll say to yourself, "Well, that's an anomaly. Who can account for that?" So this is what I study. This is my field of interest. This is where we're going. And if we can control scalar energy, okay, if this is an accidental event in which 2 objects can fuse together and we can control matter, well, anything that is harmful, radioactive material, break it apart. Toxic waste, break it apart. Imagine what we can do. We can clean up all the waste on land. We can clean up all the radioactivity left in a nuclear silo. Or we can create elements. So this is the easy way to manipulate matter. So what, after all these photographs of the aftermath of tornado, what am I getting at? We can control nature, people. We have dominion over nature. If we don't want something, if something is harmful, we break it apart. If we want to create something, an element, water, we just create it. That's where we're going with this energy. You don't need incredible amount of power. You don't need this expensive outlay for a physical plant. You're just going to create with information. So this is what gets me so excited.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you're sharing this real detailed work on Hieronymus, because once you see what somebody's already done, it's not quite so far-fetched,
Right,
and it's
right.
not as hard to believe.
I'm going to have people write this down. Our email is support@scalarlight.com. Support@scalarlight.com. And tomorrow, if you write us, we're going to send you a report from the inventor. The inventor used to take photographs of the Apollo lunar mission. He took photographs of astronauts. And while the astronauts were orbiting the moon, he was monitoring their vital signs. And he has a report on that, and he released it years ago, and I've resurrected that report. When these astronauts were in their lunar module, the inventor, Galen Hieronymus, with his machine, just by way of a photograph, just as we work with you people by way of a photograph, Galen Hieronymus was able to monitor their blood pressure. He was able to monitor their organs, their vital signs. And actually, when they traveled on the opposite side of the moon, the dark side of the moon, he kept in contact with them because scalar energy is not blocked by the moon. And the inventor was working at that time with the Food and Drug Administration, and actually Galen also had a contract with the US Army, the inventor. The US Army came to him because they wanted to find soldiers. And in order to find a soldier, all you need is a photograph, and you could find a soldier out in the battlefield. Now, when you send us photographs, the instrument finds you. And Galen Hieronymus was contracted by the government. The US Army, specifically the US Army, wanted Galen to be able to find soldiers on the battlefield, as well as enemy positions. Imagine that. By way of a photograph, you could find a tank or a missile. So you see where this is going. We can use photographs to find anybody in the world. Eventually, one of my goals is to find missing children with scalar energy. All I need is a photograph. And eventually I should be able to detect, to find the location of a missing person with a photograph. This is mind-blowing technology.
So John is asking, how large of a tower, how large of a device would be needed to break apart a trash dump of plastic?
I don't know. I don't know. It's going to be much more powerful than what I'm working with. Now, what's it going to take to break apart radioactive waste or plastic in a garbage dump? I don't know. Is it possible? I think so. If I take my cell phone, my voice can be modulated at a distance. Okay. So when we work with people, we don't work with a cell phone, we work with your photograph, okay? If I have my photograph or somebody's photograph, let me see if I can bring out my photograph. I'll use this example once again. I'm working with photographs of people in Africa. That's a collage from Africa. When I place this collage inside my instrument can detect each person and then find them, monitor them. We do all of this by way of this quantum field that's ill-defined or it's never been properly defined. This is what is so exciting to us. At pennies on the dollar, we can accomplish what you cannot accomplish readily in industrial science or in medical science. So scalar energy is a tool. It's a consummate tool where we can control nature. And it's much more, it's much safer. And it's something that you can guarantee. I can guarantee the outcome here because I'm controlling this fundamental force in nature. So that's again, I'm drawing some parallels here. There's a correlation between, I know I've made a correlation between tornadoes and the ability in my laboratory to control scalar energy. But in our nascent state, in this state of infancy, this is what I've experienced, people, time and time again. This is not hyperbole. This is not exaggeration. This is very real. And if I can do it, anybody can do it. Inventor Galen Hieronymus, I studied under their family. They secured a US, a Canadian, and a patent from the United Kingdom, 3 patents. And governments of the world wanted to work with him because they saw the potential here. But he was a peaceful man, and he was not going to sell out to the defense industry. But nonetheless, this is very real. What some might say is magic or is just too far out, it's very real, people. This is very real. And people around the world, they'll write to us and they'll simply say, well, I signed up for your free trial. As you realize, we have a free trial, a free session at the top of our website. And many people say, I don't know what you did, but I feel great, or I feel much better. Now, obviously, all they had to do is send us a photograph. We don't diagnose and we don't treat. And the reason I say we don't diagnose or we don't treat is we work with photographs. Photographs don't carry disease. They're pieces of paper. So I can't treat a photograph, and I can't cure a photograph, and I can't diagnose a photograph. But people around the world will tell us, after submitting my photograph to you, I feel better. Now, so there is a cause and effect relationship that I'm alluding to. Can I prove that? No. This science is in its infancy. All I can do is look at examples in nature and try and construe what is happening, try and understand what's happening. You know, remember, back in the 1700s, there were many philosophers who believed in electricity. They saw static electricity. You know, they saw lightning, and they believed in these concepts. But then it took Westinghouse and Edison and Tesla to harness electricity. It took, you know, hundreds of years from Plato to Aristotle, centuries, till we found Edison creating the light bulb and Tesla and Marconi creating the radio. So this is where we're at right now. We're still in the time of Aristotle, where we can only theorize about this. We don't have fast evidence. Right.
And growing food in the dark. So, you know, the wonders of scalar energy are, they're so numerous.
Let me add something to that. Hieronymus, the inventor, put plants. He had rows and rows of plants, potted plants, and he put them in his basement. And that is, he planted seeds in various pods in various potted plants, and he grew plants in the dark in his basement. Now, how did he do that? He took a scalar energy wire from the top of his house, and he funneled scalar energy from this wire into the potted plants in his basement. Then he taped up the windows in his basement. And after a few weeks, the seeds, he planted seeds in these plants, and this potted plant, okay, in pots, the seeds started to germinate in complete darkness. So Galen Hieronymus grew plants in the dark in his basement by taking a wire of scalar energy and channeling scalar energy from the top of his house down into the basement, and the wire actually stuck into the soil of these potted plants. Galen Hieronymus, the inventor, grew plants in the dark in his basement. Now, that shows you that scalar energy is from the stars, from the sun. And if Galen can channel scalar energy, sunlight and starlight, down the wire into the basement, and those wires were now placed inside the potted plants, and therefrom the seeds that had been inserted, the seeds that had been buried in the soil in the potted plants, those seeds did germinate, and those seeds did sprout. Fascinating, fascinating. Nobody's been able to reproduce his work. I've never tried that experiment. My point being is, this is a reality, people. This is a reality.
Oh,
And the world, like any invention, discovery will advance mankind. What's the purpose of the work that I'm doing with Sandra? To advance mankind. Look at the amenities that we have around us. What's the point? The modern day world makes our lives efficient. We live in a sense of comfort and ease. Take away our inventions, and you and I are going to sleep underneath a tree tonight.
I remember when we first met, Tom, we were having a conversation and Tom said to me, electricity is passe. And I said, well, it should be, but you know, light drives our biochemistry. A lot of people that take supplements, and today a lot of the health professionals, they really focus on supplements and things, and they don't really have the big picture that they think that they have. Light drives our biochemistry. Just like light, even though we can't see it, it's not in the visible spectrum, drove the biochemistry of this plant as if it were out in the sun enjoying photosynthesis. So it's just pretty amazing. I was telling Tom today, I just purchased an infrared sauna with chromotherapy. It's coming in August. I'll be the happiest person in the world when it gets here. But they even promote enhancing the killing of bacteria and germs with a sauna because it heats your body to a specific number of degrees and it penetrates your skin. And that's just one of the benefits. There are tons of benefits of Finnish saunas are what a lot of people know them as, but it's a full spectrum sauna. But it also has chromotherapy, and they tell you the benefits of each one of the colors in that chromotherapy. So the way to health is light. And by Tom understanding all the science that's come before, thank goodness we have someone to fall back on, because there are very few people who know about any of this. You don't read this in your history books. You don't, you know, you're not going to ever see it on the news. It's just not there. And so we have to go in search of the truth because it's not always presented to us.
What happened to Galen Hieronymus?
So we're going to pause for a minute. Any questions? Any comments?
Just wondered what happened to him. Did they kill him or?
No, Hieronymus, he was well respected by the United States government. He worked for the FDA for a while, for the United States Army, but he was just so far advanced, like Tesla, that they just can't put it together. So he died of natural causes. His wife was so kind to me. I met his wife when she was 83 years of age, and she took me under her wing, and she saw my interest, and she gave me many of the secrets and many of the inventions.
Wow.
So she passed this legacy on to me, because nobody quite I met her in 1993. I was enthralled. No, very few people could really even grasp it. And, you know, even today it's difficult. So only by the grace of God do I think people really grasp this and understand this. So all by way of a photograph. I never meet the people I work with. You know, all of these sessions are done remotely by way of a photograph. I'll let the world make the conclusion, draw the conclusion.
I had a photo of Sarah, but I think I might have filed it somewhere with the cosmic pipe standing beside it. And I think you even have an old photograph of standing beside one.
Yes, that's
and
correct.
Possibly at her home.
Yep, that's correct.
Just incredible. Wouldn't that be just a dream to be able to have that type of thing in your home or at your home?
Let me explain. We're speaking about a plastic pipe that the inventor Hieronymus created. And at the top, there was a copper plate that would serve as a capacitor that would capture scalar energy and then channel it down the pipe. And the pipe was in a farm field, maybe 3 or 4 feet deep. So this cosmic pipe would take scalar energy, amplify it throughout the instrument. And once it hit the ground, it was again installed in the ground, in the earth, it would broadcast, it would propagate a scalar energy signal into the ground. And by virtue of this cosmic pipe, what they call in a farm field or in a ranch, the soil was remineralized. You did not have to do anything. The cosmic pipe would automatically remineralize the soil. And secondly, many of the crops in that area responded favorably. In other words, it produced an abundance of vegetation as compared to something a mile or two down the road that was not under the influence of the cosmic pipe. And many of the farmers said that anywhere the cosmic pipe was installed, that local area did not have severe weather. That local area did not have violent thunderstorms. That local area did not have hail because it set up a force field around that area. Quite fascinating, quite fascinating. So those are some of the stories that I wanted to share with you. That's been my 40-year career with scalar energy. I'm trying to bring this to light again. To be candid with you, I'm probably the only surviving disciple of Hieronymus. Everybody else is dead, is deceased. Hieronymus was born in 1895, and he lived a very productive life, but you know, his wife died penniless. It's a shame. And nobody has continued on with his work except me. Nobody. So, you know, I have an obligation to be made known to the public. And I will go on record by saying that we can change, we can transmute matter with this instrument. And if we can change and control matter, then we can control the physical universe. Next Thursday, I'll have some more examples of how scalar energy is released during earthquakes. An upwelling of energy during an earthquake is an upwelling of scalar energy. And some earthquakes, this energy, this intelligence will create water. So one of the things that we could do with scalar energy in the future is create water, the creation of water by bringing together hydrogen and oxygen. I'll show you examples next week when we speak. You know, one day at a time and one set of evidence and one set of events bolstered and corroborated by photographs. I'll have some photographs for you for next week. But I want to round it off this week. There's another, I'm going to touch upon this just briefly. There's a man by the name of Delaware, George Delaware, and he had a scalar energy instrument. And he could take an unprocessed film. Now, this is back 50, 60 years ago, when they were still using a roll of film, okay, not digital. And according to Delaware, let's say my fist represents a scalar energy instrument. Delaware could place a roll of film, okay, inside an instrument. And he could think of a thought. And then after a while, he would take that film out, and that film would have a snapshot in his life. That film on it would have the impression of some event in his life. Meaning what? A scalar energy instrument carries information. And by placing in that instrument a film that did not have any image on it, that Delaware could impart by thought, again, this is thought, Delaware can impart a thought upon that film. And once he took that film out, Delaware would see some part of his life. He would see a photograph of some part of his life from a past event. That's incredible.
That is incredible. Almost as if his intention was that manifestation of scalar light, and he created with his intention that piece of his past, or something to that effect, I'm guessing.
What does that mean? That means scalar energy is the timeline. It allows us to access time dimensions, okay? And that only makes sense because what is time? It has to be a function of light. Time is the effect, that time is the result. So the cause of time is scalar energy. And if you're working with a scalar energy instrument, that scalar energy instrument, if you place in the scalar energy instrument a roll of film that film eventually will take on the character on a specific event. And eventually on that solenoid, on that film, you will see a photograph of your life, your past life. That's quite unique. You know, I've never shared that publicly. You know, there's some things I'll speak to this group that I won't share publicly. It's just too much for people.
Yeah.
It's, you know, they would run away from us in a second. They say, wow, that guy's just off his rocker. Get away from him. But keep in mind, the Hieronymus instrument that I work with has a US patent, a Canadian patent, and a UK patent. So those three governments were amiss to acknowledge this instrument? No, they saw the merit of it. It was a functioning instrument to them. It had some reality. Why doesn't the world look into this? Anyway, my point is, it looks like just about every Thursday night in August and September, this fall season, we'll have a chat. I have no place to go. I'm not traveling. I'm homebound. As Sandra said, please tell your friends and family about the free trial. The only way you could experience it is by trying a free trial. That's why we're so liberal with this. It's on the website all the time, 24 hours a day. And it's going to be people power. You know, for whatever reason, this research is suppressed. If it can do half the things that I announced tonight, the world should be working with us. No. You know, think about what I'm saying, people. If you have children, if you have relatives, we all do. Why don't we make this a better world? Why don't we use technology as our servant, and scalar technology should be serving us well to a greater capacity than what it is. You know, I can't let this go to the grave. It went to the grave with Tesla, it went to the grave with Moray, it went to the grave with my predecessor, Hieronymus. I'm 60 years old. Is it going to go to the grave with me? I don't know.
So how do they try to explain that, Tom? How does the normal world try to explain that, or do they?
They can't. They have no clue. Susie, when you hear of pulsars and quasars in outer space, and people cannot figure out what the heck's going on, that's a scalar event. Those quasars, those pulsars it's a scalar energy force field. A lot of times when they look at that with a high-powered telescope, they said, well, this doesn't make sense. That's not electricity and magnetism. I know it's not electricity and magnetism. It's scalar. And the reason why we have quasars and nobody knows what the heck they are, it's not electricity. You cannot define a quasar by way of electricity. So it's like so obvious. If there's two events and the two events are different, they're dissimilar, then they're probably two dissimilar causes.
It's just incredible how much information we haven't gotten. I thought there were only 3 states of matter: solid, liquid, and gas. But nobody ever talks about plasma. Nobody ever talks about that. That's the 4th state of matter. That's what emanates from human beings.
Which is scalar.
Scalar.
Scalar. You know, you could call it plasma or quantum. It's scalar.
Yeah.
It's right in front of us all the time. Yeah. You know, Sandra and I we knock our heads silly and we say, well, what are you going to do? You know, there's only so much. By the way, all of you are geniuses tonight, and I give all of you an A+ because you're open-minded for this. Thank you. Bravo. Enjoy your evening. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good night. God bless.
Good night.
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 Keep the faith.